Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to another episode of the podcast where today we are going to be previewing the second test and what the teams need to do and where they need to improve for the second test. And it is very important because if certain teams don't improve for the second test, then they're going to be in trouble going into the first races of 2019. Hopefully you guys who are watching are doing well. Currently, as you are watching this, I'm in Spain, settling down and getting ready for the second test. But by the way, this is being recorded before I've actually left. So I'm not recording this in Spain, I'm recording this from where I am in the UK. But yeah, as you're watching this, I will be currently getting ready for the second test in Spain. But as ever, to preview the second test and to look at what the teams need to do for the second test, I need to bring in my usual podcast guest, as always, Niblo. And Nib, how are you doing, mate?
I am doing well as always, and I'm certainly very excited for this second preseason test after certainly what was a very interesting first preseason test. But of course, we are looking forward to the second one more now.
Absolutely, because it is so important, and we're now going to get a better idea of who is quick and who is not. And I cannot wait to see for myself who is quick and who is not. So let's go into the teams and start off with Mercedes. Now, the first test wasn't, I think, as bad as some say, but they definitely didn't have a good first test. The car front to rear is not gripping up properly. It doesn't look anywhere near as good as the Ferrari or even the Red Bull. They've got to make some serious changes or got to bring some new parts to try and improve this car, because they don't want to start off the season half a second behind Ferrari, which is what Toto Wolff came out and said in terms of the gaps between Ferrari and Mercedes. They cannot allow that to happen, and they have to start closing that gap in the second test. They absolutely have to, because if they don't, then for the first few races, they are probably going to be behind Ferrari, and they cannot in the title battle. They cannot allow that to happen. Nib, for the first test, what do you think they need to really work on in or with that car, especially aerodynamically?
I think it's clear that Mercedes are struggling with some understeer, so they need to try and get some more front and downforce, which is so hard with you're not allowing with the new regulations on the front wing. And I'm gonna say some stuff here which Gary Anderson had said on an Autosport video the other day, that one of the reasons why Mercedes is struggling so much is because with with there being a lack of front end downforce produced by the front wing, Mercedes are really struggling in the slow speed corners compared to everyone else, because they run the lowest rake out of anyone on the grid, whereas everyone else is running a lot higher rake. And with the front wing being pushed down into the ground more through the slower corners, with the ground effect, the other teams are able to produce more downforce than Mercedes. So it's really their low rake car is really affecting them in the slow speed corners, and that's a fundamental part of their car. You can't just change the rake with like that. You have to. There are other changes that have to be made. It's something that Mercedes can't really fix. So they need to try and find some sort of way to produce more front downforce, maybe by changing their front wing design, where the end plate is actually pointing out and trying to create that outwash and producing more downforce than perhaps what it is now. They've gone very 2009 esque, like some teams did with the inward facing end plates, which is a very strange design when everyone else is going with the traditional end plate approach. But maybe they can run they can run the numbers on a Ferrari or a Sauber front wing, and we will see after the first couple of races which one is the better design. Because I assume a couple of teams will rock up with some very different front wing designs compared what they've had to so far. So I think that's certainly where Mercedes need to improve. Their reliability is good, but now they need to focus really on their long run pace once more, because it hasn't been that impressive from Mercedes, and it usually is pretty good. And of course, the performance runs, they need to focus on that to see how the car handles on lower fuel, and to see what they need to do in terms of the balance of the car is different on the lower fuel, which of course it will be. So it'll be very important for Mercedes to do a lot of low fuel run in the second test.
Yeah, like you say with the rake, it's something you can't really massively, alter at this point. They've got to try and find a ways around that. But as you said, they are struggling with a lot of understeer, and they've got to improve the front end of this car, because compared to the Ferrari, as we'll get onto in a moment, it just looks way more comfortable, especially at the front end. The front end for the Ferrari, even if they are running higher wing, which is something Nib said in the podcast a couple days ago. Even if they're running higher wing, the front end still looks a lot better than the Mercedes. So yeah, they do have to improve those areas of their car. But moving on to Ferrari, well, it's pretty simple. Keep up what you were doing in the first test, but push a bit harder when it comes to the qualifying simulations, and also really try to see where you are in terms of race simulations compared to Mercedes and Red Bull, and even Alfa Romeo and Renault, if they are closer than you may think. They've got to really see how they compare to the rest of the field. I think Ferrari do right now have the best car, but they do need to work out, the gaps, so they can work out what they need to do in the first few races. But mainly, Nib, all they have to do is keep up what they did in that first preseason test.
Yeah, Ferrari don't really have to do anything spectacular. Of course, they're going to do some more performance runs in qualifying simulations, as you mentioned, just to see how the balance of the car is on that lower fuel. And yeah, they probably need to run a few more race simulations, as most teams will in the second test. But mainly now with the second test, everyone's like, right, we've got our reliability out sorted. Let's see how quick our car is. And Ferrari already know they have a very quick car. That they can see that. They'll know from the data that they have and from everyone else's data. So it is just about making sure that the balance of car is good on different fuel loads for Ferrari. They don't really need to do anything crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do go and set the times alight in the second week of testing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to put out kind of a statement on track and go for an amazing lap time. And I will say this, don't be surprised if the pole position from last year by Lewis Hamilton in the 2018 Spanish Grand Prix at that track, don't be surprised if that time is broken by Ferrari or even other teams in the second test. Because I'm going to say it now, I don't think the teams have lost anything compared to 2018, and by the end of 2019 they are going to be going even more faster than they will be at this point of the season. So don't be surprised if Ferrari are going so fast compared to other teams, because that really could happen. But now let's move on to Red Bull, who had a very good first test in terms of reliability with the new Honda power unit. But now, the second test, they have to start doing qualifying simulations and start to push this car, turn the Honda engine up a bit, and really see how quick it is and what they can do for 2019 with this entire car. I am really looking forward, rather, to seeing what they can do, because I think they are conserving a bit of power that they could use, for example, on a qualifying lap. And if they really start to push it in the second test, don't be surprised if this team is really, really quick in the second test. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Nib, for the second test, if Red Bull push a lot harder, do you expect to see a surprise and see them right there with Mercedes, or even right there with Ferrari even?
They'll certainly be right there with Mercedes, but I'm not too sure about Ferrari. I do think Red Bull at the moment are just slightly ahead of Mercedes, but it's very hard to tell because they haven't done any low fuel run. And of course, Honda have said that they haven't turned up the engine at all. So it'll be interesting to see just how quick that Honda engine is, and if they do run into any little reliability issues when the Honda power unit is turned up to 11. So it'll be interesting to see how Red Bull do fit into the fold.
Yeah, hopefully they can push a bit harder. And again, try, maybe like Ferrari, send a statement out as to how quick you really are. But also, another team that needs to send out a statement as to how quick they are is, for me, Renault. Because look, in the first test, their car looks good. But I get the feeling that they're not maybe as good as maybe they should be. Or maybe they are very good, but they're just not showing it as much. But what they need to do in the second test is really show us what they have for 2019, because it would be so disappointing if it turned out Renault, in terms of the pecking order, were no better than 2018. They really need to, in the second test, go for it and show us the pace that they do have. And I think if they do really push it, they could be, say, fourth fastest and be very competitive. But I have doubts about that. But we'll see in the second test. Nib, for Renault, what do you want to see from them in the second test?
They definitely still need to do some long race stints. Sorry. Those long race stints do look very promising for Renault, very close to Mercedes and the top teams on those, but especially Mercedes. And you've seen on the last day of the first preseason test that they didn't do very many laps, and that's because they were absolutely focusing on getting the balance right um, for their qualifying runs that they're going to do. And if you have to make a change for the rear suspension, you have to take the gearbox off, and that's why we probably seen them only do well under 100 laps. So Renault just need to make sure that the balance of the car on those quali runs are better, because it was clear to see that they probably weren't as great as they were hoping for in terms of how the car felt on the last day of the first preseason test. But on the long runs, they do look very, very good.
Yeah, I think with the race simulations, I think they do look good, but compared to, say, Alfa Romeo and Haas, when it comes to, say, the qualifying simulations, I haven't been as impressed with Renault as I have been with Alfa Romeo and Haas. But I get the feeling with Renault that they're going to show us a lot more in the second test, and hopefully they do.
I mean, Renault were quicker than Alpha and Haas in their qualifying simulations, even though Haas really haven't done one yet, but they were faster than Alpha in their qualifying run.
True, but I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Alfa Romeo don't have the Ferrari power unit turned up massively. And also, I think on a couple of the days, Alfa were running on, I think, a step harder tyre. I'll have to look back, but I think on day 4, Giovinazzi was on, I think, a couple steps harder, or at least one step harder of a tyre. So, again, I'm not as impressed with those two teams, Alfa and Haas, as I have been with Renault. They are still, as a group of 3, they are very, very close in terms of performance, I think. But I'm hoping to see a lot more from Renault, and I think they can show us a bit more. Now let's go on to McLaren, who had a very good first test in terms of reliability and just the headlines, I guess, compared to the first test of 2018. But now, in the second test, they've got to start showing us how good is this McLaren. I don't think it is that good. I don't think it is competitive with, say, the top of the midfield. I think it is better than it was at the end of 2018, but they really need to now see what they have for this season so they can come up with a plan of how 2019 is going to go. Nib, for McLaren, are you hoping that they'll be better than we're expecting, basically?
Well, I hope so. I hope they're close to Haas and not Toro Rosso, Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Renault, and I do think they have the potential to be that close. But I think the biggest story for the second test is Fernando Alonso going to get in that McLaren? Because there's been very strong rumours that he might be driving the car in the second pre-season test. Now, I certainly hope it doesn't. The only person that it benefits if he drives that car and pumps in a ridiculous quick time is Fernando Alonso. It doesn't benefit McLaren. It doesn't benefit Carlos Sainz. It doesn't benefit Lando Norris. So I certainly hope Fernando doesn't drive this McLaren in the second preseason test because it only benefits him. You know, then he'll give this feedback, and it could be contrary to Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, and he's not the one who's actually driving the car in this season. So, I really do hope that Fernando doesn't jump in the car in the second test.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he should because, as you said, it doesn't benefit not only the drivers but the team because he isn't going to be driving the car. So, you know, what's the point? There's no real point to having him in the car. You need to get Sainz and Norris as confident in the 2019 McLaren and get them as much mileage with this new McLaren as possible, considering that currently in F1, testing is very restrictive compared to, say, the early days of Fernando Alonso's career, where testing was a lot freer. You know, you need Sainz and Norris to be confident in this McLaren. Don't let Fernando Alonso get in the car basically just for a show run, because he's not going to be racing in 2019. So what's the point? There is no point. So I hope they don't do that. Even though I am going to the second test, yes, it would be great to see Fernando Alonso say one last time. Even though I did see him at Silverstone in the 6 hours of Silverstone race. It would be great to see him one last time, I guess, for me in a Formula 1 car, but it doesn't benefit McLaren. So, McLaren, please don't do it just for publicity because it's not going to work. It's not going to work in terms of your results for 2019. But now let's move on from McLaren and go on to Alfa Romeo, who for me, right now, just about have the best car out of the midfield. But what I want to see in the second test is for them to just continue to keep up this performance, but I want to see them keep improving and getting better, and I think they will. But basically, I guess it's kind of similar to Ferrari. Just keep doing what you were doing during the first test. Also, Antonio Giovinazzi, I think, if Alfa Romeo with Raikkonen and Giovinazzi were running similar programs on the days they drove, I think Giovinazzi does have to improve his pace a bit. Again, though, we don't know if they were running the same program. I assume they weren't running the exact same program. But yeah, as a team, for Alfa Romeo, they just need to keep doing what they are doing. Nib, for Alfa, what do you want them to do in the second test?
Well, in the second test, they've got very, very good reliability, of course, with that Ferrari engine. It's just not going to break down. It was the most reliable engine last year on the grid, and I once again expect it to be the same this upcoming season. But for the second preseason test, Alpha do need to just keep doing some long run pace because it's been a little bit cloudy exactly where they are in the long run pace. That they're not too far behind Renault and very much there with Haas. Um, so if they can improve that pace, that would be good. But with I think they need to do a few more qualifying simulations. Of course, we've seen Kimi do one on the C5 tire. It was on the third day, which was a very nice lap. But he said that he wasn't really pushing on that lap. So if they turn up the wick on the engine a little bit more and do push the car, we'll certainly get a bit better of an idea exactly where they are. But yeah, the Alpha really don't need to change too much of what they're doing. They're doing a fantastic job. They've improved so much compared to this time last year, and I just hope that they can keep it up and just have an awesome battle in the midfield and potentially with the top three, which it looks like it is shaping up to be.
Yeah, hopefully they continue the good work that they have done. But also, I guess that also goes for Haas when it comes to the pace and the grip of their car. But one thing they do, and it is very obvious, that they do have to work on is reliability, because they were the most unreliable team during the first test, and they've got to sort those issues out. I think they will, but they have to, because they don't want these issues hampering them in Australia and even Bahrain, Shanghai, Baku, and the races after that. They've got to sort it out before testing finishes on Friday. They absolutely have to. But for Haas, I guess, Nib, that's basically it, isn't it? All they got to do is sort out the reliability.
Yes, it looks like those little electrical faults that they were having on the third day of preseason testing have gone away, but they just need to make sure that those issues are ironed out. It's not like the engine has been blowing up. Nothing too major in terms of reliability for Haas. It's never good, of course, when you break down and especially when it's three times in the same day. But it wasn't a major concern. They still did a good amount of laps on that day as well. So nothing too concerning for Haas, but their long run pace has been pretty good. And I think now they need to more focus on their qualifying simulations. You know, just to make sure that the balance of the car is still very good, like it has been in the long runs. And that Haas does look a very good car. It's looked very nice on track whenever we've seen it on the broadcasts that have been displaying, well, which have been broadcasting the preseason test. So Haas just need to keep doing what they're doing, really, and make sure that those small issues are ironed out, but nothing really too much for them to do. Just need to find out exactly where they are in the pecking order.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they do have, once they get those reliability issues sorted out, I think they do have a quick car for 2019. Now let's go on to Racing Point. And for them, it's also pretty simple. They need to really start testing some 2019 parts and do more running and get some more confidence going in this team, because if they continue what they were doing in the first test, even though they're going to have a completely new car basically for Melbourne, they're not going to be as confident in what they have once the racing gets underway for real in Australia. So they've got to try and get some new parts that are actually going to be used for 2019 on the car and get the confidence going. Because for me, with this team, it doesn't seem like they're very confident in what they have. They're basically just running the car for mileage. Basically, they're not really testing out what they have for the season. They're just running the car as long as they really want to. So yeah, for them also, Nib, I think they really need to just focus on getting confidence going in this team.
Yeah, for Racing Point, they are indeed just running for mileage. They have a couple of bits and bobs that are on that, which are actually going to be at Melbourne for the first race, but they're going to have basically a whole brand new car for Melbourne, so there's not much point in doing too much running, um, just because it's not what their car is actually going to be. So in Melbourne, in the couple of practice sessions that they get, that's certainly going to be a lot more valuable to them to see how their car is and if everything is correlating. So at the moment, they do need to do more running to make sure that there is no reliability issues with their car. You wouldn't expect any reliability issues from Haas, but there have been, but just on their side. So just need to make sure that that's all sorted out before Melbourne. But yeah, it's kind of a bit pointless for Racing Point, this test. It's just a little bit too early for them to get their actual proper car on track.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult testing so far, but I feel as though if things can go a lot better in the second test, then maybe things are looking a bit more up than they are, for example, right now. But we'll now move on to Toro Rosso, who also, like Ferrari and Alfa Romeo, need to continue what they are doing. Now, I wasn't that impressed with the Toro Rosso car on day 1 and day 2 of the first test, but day 3 and day 4, the car looked a lot better with lower fuel, and this car ain't looking that bad. So they need to keep it up and keep pushing the car and seeing, especially with the Honda power unit to help out Red Bull, they need to really test, I guess, the type of power that the Honda can put out on a qualifying-esque lap. And it seems as though Toro Rosso have been pushing a lot harder compared to Red Bull. And you'd really expect that because Toro Rosso are in their second year with Honda and Red Bull are in their first. So again, Nib, like Ferrari and like Alfa Romeo, I think Toro Rosso just need to continue, you know, putting in tons of laps and also showing what the car can do.
Yes, indeed, Toro Rosso. Just need to keep doing what they're doing at the moment. Their qualifying runs have been promising. I wouldn't say they've been that great. I think the midfield can still go a little bit quicker than them. But I certainly think that they're going to improve on their position with the reliability of the Honda power unit being so much better than last year, and the power of the Honda power unit being so much better than last year. And well, we didn't really get to see how much Honda had gained because every time they were on track, they were pretty much blowing up because they were pushing everything so hard just to try and improve everything. So yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting year for Toro Rosso. They've pretty much accepted already that they're going to be guinea pigs for Honda, um, so that Red Bull and all the new power unit parts can be reliable before Red Bull gets them. So it's going to be interesting for Toro Rosso. I think they will be closer to the middle and the top of the midfield than they were last year. But the car looks all right on track. I wouldn't say it looks anything special, but there's certainly still room for improvement with Toro Rosso. A few more long runs along with the qualifying runs. That's just what the teams need to do. More qualifying runs in the second test, and that is, of course, what we will see. Um, and then we can get a real a rough idea of where they are in the pecking order, because I do think they are closer to, say, Haas and Renault than what they were last year, and especially towards the end of our last season.
Yeah, I think Toro Rosso are looking a bit better than I expected, because coming into the season, I wasn't that hopeful for them. But yeah, things are looking good. But for one team, and we'll go on to them now, it is not looking good, and that is Williams. They have to somehow make the second test as uh, as great as they can. They need to run the car as long as possible, but also in the final 2 days, they've got to go for it and just see how quick the car is, because I get the feeling, honestly, that they're going to turn up to the first race and be so far off everyone else. And I think they are anyway, to be honest. But yeah, right now, even though it's pretty obvious what they need to improve for the second test, well, obviously, turn up is one. But I honestly, I don't see how they can have a good second test. I don't see how this season is going to be anything remotely good. It's going to be a terrible season. And Nib, I don't know what you think, but for me, even though there are plenty of things they can improve, I don't see how they possibly can.
Well, they've had 1.5 days on track, and I pretty much think that Williams 2019 is a waste of time. They're not going to improve. They didn't last season. I don't see why they or how they can improve this season. That their car is so underdeveloped to the rest of the midfield. And you get they don't have they don't have enough money to bring major upgrades to improve their car. I don't see them being anywhere really other than the back of the grid. It's it's just becoming so irritating to talk about how hopeless and rubbish this team really are as of late, because I want them to do well, but no, of course they can't. So hopefully we see some better signs from the second test, but I don't really hold much hope for Williams.
Yeah, and I don't either. With this team, the only way I see this team going is down. And I know it's sad to say, but that's the cold, hard truth. Williams are in a crisis and a downward spiral to basically rock bottom. But that is the preview for what the teams need to do for the second preseason test. I cannot wait to see these cars for myself and see who is quick and who is not. But I also want to say to Nib, thank you very much for coming along for the podcast as usual.
Of course, mate, it's always great to be on the podcast, and I seriously can't wait to see how the teams do in the second preseason test. As then, once that is finished, we will only be 2 weeks away from the start of the season, and very exciting times already. My favourite weekend of the year, when the F1 circus rolls into Melbourne. It is absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait for the start of the season.
Yeah, neither can I. And again, thanks, mate, for coming along. Now, I just need to give this update before I end the video. There will hopefully be a review of, I'm calling it day 5 of preseason testing, because that's what it is. I'm trying for tomorrow, I'm going to try and get something out on the channel regarding day 5. The plan is to record me talking in front of the camera and talking about what's happened on day 5 and also showing a couple stats like the results and stuff like that. I will try to do my best, but I need to stress this, guys. Please don't expect things to go smoothly because, as you know, issues can happen with equipment. So please be patient. I'll try to do my best and I'll try to put something out or tomorrow on Tuesday. I'll try my best. I can't guarantee anything, but I'm hoping to put something out tomorrow regarding day 5 of pre-season testing in 2019. And if you do want that content, then don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or click my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe for more content like this. And also hit the notifications bell, like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what do these teams need to do during the second test. Who needs to improve and who needs to continue doing what they were doing in the first test. Also, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. That's the best way for notifications for my videos and streams. And when it comes to video clips from the track, I'm going to try and post the majority, if not all of it, in that server. So please go to that server if you want to see video clips of the cars. And also, we are pretty interactive in there when it comes to talking during testing, and I'm sure it'll be the same for the 2019 season. So don't forget to join that and our wonderful community over there. And also follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110 and check out my website ChazzaHDF1 for more content like this. But guys, until my reviews of the second test, which hopefully is starting tomorrow, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.